The contestant had just bid $1,200 on the dinette set when Bob Barker felt it. The familiar weight of the microphone in his hand suddenly seemed different, heavier somehow. As he shifted his grip to announce the next bid, his thumb found a worn groove in the metal handle that shouldn't have been there. Bob's blood went cold. He knew this microphone, not just as equipment, but as intimately as a soldier knows their rifle. The groove under his thumb, worn smooth by years of nervous rubbing, told him exactly which mic this was. Serial number RTH 1138, the one that had been destroyed in the fire. The one he'd personally watched maintenance throw in the dumpster on March 15, 1995. The one Sarah Morrison had been holding when she died. How did it come to this? The morning had started like any other. Bob arrived at CBS Television City at his usual 6:30 a.m., reviewed the showcase items, checked his notes. The show was celebrating its 40th anniversary with special prizes and surprise guests. Everything meticulously planned, every detail checked twice. Bob prided himself on control, on knowing every element of a show down to the smallest prop. But something had been off from the moment he'd walked into Studio 33. A new sound engineer was working the board, someone Bob didn't recognize. When he'd asked, the technical director just shrugged. Jerry called in sick. This is his replacement from the union pool. The man had kept his head down, adjusting levels with practiced efficiency, never meeting Bob's eyes. The first segments had gone smoothly. Contestants came on down, prices were guessed, small dramas played out under the studio lights. Bob moved through it all with his trademark professionalism, but something nagged at him. The replacement engineer kept adjusting Bob's mic levels, switching out equipment during commercial breaks, always with perfectly valid technical reasons. It wasn't until the third act, during the dinette showcase, that Bob's thumb found that groove. That specific pattern created by Sarah Morrison's nervous habit during her 18 months as a contestant coordinator. She'd hold Bob's mic during rehearsals, rubbing that exact spot while reviewing prize descriptions, wearing down the brushed steel surface until it was smooth as glass. Bob Barker quietly set the microphone down. The entire studio fell silent. His hands were trembling as he stared at the impossible object. The contestant looked confused, her $1,200 bid hanging in the air unanswered. The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't part of the show. Bob Barker never broke rhythm, never lost his place, never let the mask slip. Where did this come from? Bob's voice was barely above a whisper, but in the studio's perfect acoustics, it carried to every corner. Behind the scenes, Bob made a decision no host had ever made before. He picked up the microphone again and held it up to the lights, examining it like an archaeologist with an impossible artifact. There was the serial number, etched into the base. RTH 1138. There was the tiny dent from when it had been dropped during the 1994 Christmas special. There was the slight discoloration from Sarah's hand lotion, the vanilla-scented one she'd used religiously. "Stop tape," Bob commanded. The words came out sharp, military. "Everyone stay exactly where you are." The new sound engineer stood up from behind the board, and Bob finally saw his face clearly. His heart nearly stopped. It was David Morrison, Sarah's younger brother. 28 years older, gray-haired now, but unmistakably David. The last time Bob had seen him was at Sarah's funeral, a destroyed 20-year-old kid screaming accusations that everyone pretended not to hear. "Hello, Mr. Barker," David said, his voice calm but carrying decades of buried fury. "I told you I'd be back. I told you I'd make you remember." The memories crashed over Bob like a tsunami. March 14th, 1995. Sarah working late, preparing for a special week of shows. The argument with the director about showcase placement. Bob taking Sarah's side, defending her ideas. The director, drunk and vindictive, sabotaging the next day's setup. The light rig that wasn't properly secured. Sarah standing in exactly the wrong spot when 400 pounds of equipment came crashing down. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what happened after. She was holding this microphone when she died, David continued, walking slowly onto the set. "You were 20 feet away. You could have warned her. You saw the rig swaying. I know you did because I've watched the tape 1,000 times. There's a fraction of a second where your eyes go up, where you see it starting to fall. Bob's legs felt weak. He gripped the podium for support. I tried. No, David cut him off. You calculated. That's what you do, isn't it? Calculate odds, percentages, prices. You calculated that warning her might put you in danger too. So you took a step back instead. One step. That's all. One step back instead of one word forward. But this is the moment no one in the studio, and no one watching at home, ever saw coming. David pulled out a worn VHS tape from his jacket. The only copy that survived the fire. The insurance company tried to destroy them all, but Sarah had made a backup. She always made backups. Said you taught her that. Always have insurance, you used to tell her. He walked to the technical booth and inserted the tape into an old player that shouldn't have been there. That must have been brought in specially for this moment. The studio monitors flickered to life, showing grainy footage from March 15th, 1995. There was Sarah, young and vibrant, holding Bob's microphone while discussing showcase arrangements. There was Bob in the background. And there, clear as day, was the moment the light rig began to fail. Bob watched his younger self glance up. Saw the recognition in his own eyes. Saw the microscopic hesitation, the weight shift, the small step backward. Saw Sarah, oblivious, still talking into the microphone about how excited the contestants would be. Saw the shadows converge above her. Saw himself open his mouth as if to speak, then close it. Saw the lights fall. The studio was tomb silent. The contestant had backed away from her podium. The audience sat frozen. Even the cameramen had stepped back from their equipment. Everyone watching Bob Barker discover what he really was. But here's the thing, David continued, ejecting the tape. I didn't come here for revenge. I came here for something else. Do you know what Sarah wrote in her diary the night before she died? Bob shook his head, unable to speak. David pulled out a small notebook, its pages yellow with age. He read, Bob defended me again today. He's always looking out for everyone. Sometimes I think he cares too much, takes too much responsibility. He can't save everyone, but he tries. That's why he's special. That's why this show matters. It's not about the prizes. It's about someone caring. David's voice broke. He cleared his throat and continued. She idolized you. Even if she'd known about that step backward, she would have forgiven you. She would have understood that it was human instinct, that split second of self-preservation that we all have. But you never forgave yourself, did you? Subscribe and leave a comment. Because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Bob found his voice. I destroyed the tapes myself. Paid off the insurance investigators. Made sure no one would ever know. Because you were protecting your image? David asked. Because I couldn't face it, Bob replied. Every day since then, every show, every contestant, I've tried to make up for that step backward. But you can't, can you? You can't undo a moment of cowardice with a lifetime of kindness. David approached Bob and held out his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Bob gave him the microphone. David examined it, running his thumb over the worn groove his sister had created. I've spent 28 years hating you, David said, planning this moment, imagining your face when I proved what you did. But you know what I learned? Hate is just grief that's gotten lost. Sarah wouldn't want this. She wouldn't want her death to be anyone's defining moment. He handed the microphone back to Bob. I had it restored. Every dent, every mark, every worn spot exactly as it was. Not to torture you, but to give you a chance to do what you couldn't do then. To step forward instead of back. Bob looked at the microphone, then at David, then at the studio, full of people waiting to see what he would do. He thought of all the years of guilt disguised as generosity, all the prizes given away to balance a cosmic scale that could never be balanced. Then Bob Barker did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He walked forward, past the showcase podiums, past the big wheel, to the exact spot where Sarah had stood 28 years ago. He looked up at the lighting rig, now safely secured with triple redundancy. He spoke into the microphone she had held. On March 15th, 1995, a member of our Price is Right family named Sarah Morrison died in an accident that could have been prevented. I saw the danger and failed to warn her. I stepped back when I should have stepped forward. I've carried that with me every day since. The studio was silent except for the hum of equipment and the soft sobbing of a few audience members who understood they were witnessing something unprecedented. I've given away millions in prizes trying to atone for that moment, Bob continued. But David is right. Some things can't be fixed with gifts. They can only be faced with truth. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Bob turned to face the audience, the cameras, the millions of viewers who would eventually see this. I've spent my career telling you to come on down, to spin the wheel, to guess the price. But I never told you the most important thing. Sometimes the price of being human is making mistakes that can't be undone. The real showdown isn't between contestants. It's between who we were and who we choose to be. David was crying now, 28 years of anger dissolving into grief. Bob walked to him and, still holding Sarah's microphone, embraced him. Two men united by loss, by guilt, by the terrible understanding that we are all just one step away from tragedy or heroism. She would have forgiven us both, Bob whispered. You for the anger, me for the cowardice. That's who she was. When they separated, Bob made an announcement that would change the price is right forever. From this day forward, we're establishing the Sarah Morrison Safety Fund. Every contestant who comes on down will contribute to ensuring that no one in television production ever faces preventable danger again. Her death will save lives. Her memory will protect others. The audience erupted in applause, but it wasn't the usual game show enthusiasm. It was deeper, more resonant. They were applauding truth, redemption, the messy complexity of being human. Bob finished the show with Sarah's microphone. Every word carried the weight of her memory, the worn groove under his thumb a constant reminder. When contestants won, he celebrated with genuine joy. When they lost, he consoled them with real empathy. The microphone transformed him from performer to truth-teller. In the days that followed, the story spread. Not as scandal, but as revelation. Bob Barker, the perfect host, was human. Flawed. Capable of cowardice and courage in the same lifetime. Instead of destroying him, it made him more beloved. Letters poured in from people who had stepped backward when they should have stepped forward, who carried their own secret shames. David Morrison became a regular presence at tapings, working with the safety committee, ensuring his sister's death continued to mean something. He and Bob developed an unlikely friendship, bonded by shared grief and mutual forgiveness. The microphone, Sarah's microphone, became Bob's preferred equipment. He insisted on using it for every show until his retirement. The worn groove deepened over the years, Bob's thumb finding the exact spot where Sarah's had rested. It became a talisman, a reminder, a connection between the living and the lost. When Bob retired in 2007, he made one final gesture. He had the microphone bronzed and installed in the CBS Television City lobby with a plaque that read, "In memory of Sarah Morrison and all who stepped forward despite their fear." The price of silence is always too high. Years later, as Bob approached his 100th birthday, a reporter asked him about his legacy. He could have talked about the Emmys, the decades of success, the millions in prizes given away. Instead, he talked about a microphone and a moment of cowardice that taught him the real value of courage. We all step backwards sometimes, he said. The measure of a life isn't in never failing, but in what we do with our failures. Sarah Morrison's death was the worst moment of my life. But honoring her memory, facing that truth, became my redemption. That's the real price we all must pay. The cost of becoming who we're meant to be. David Morrison was there for that interview, gray-haired now himself, holding a picture of his sister. When asked if he'd truly forgiven Bob, he smiled. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a practice. Every day, I choose to forgive him, and every day, he chooses to earn it. That's what Sarah would have wanted. That's how we keep her alive. The interview ended with Bob holding the restored microphone one more time, his aged thumb finding that familiar groove. For a moment, everyone in the room could almost see her, Sarah Morrison, forever young, holding that same microphone, discussing showcases she never got to present, prizes she never got to award, but whose death gave birth to safety standards that saved countless lives. That's the legacy of the worn microphone. Not just a piece of equipment, but a testament to human frailty and redemption. Bob Barker wasn't just a game show host. He was a man who learned that the highest price we ever pay is for the courage to face our own truth. And sometimes, if you visit CBS Television City and look at that bronze microphone in its case, you can see the wear pattern clearly. A smooth groove worn by two thumbs. One belonging to a young woman who died too soon. One to an old man who spent a lifetime trying to earn forgiveness. Come on down. The price of truth is always right.